Lock your room carefully before going to bed. Otherwise, I didn't believe in ghosts. My life revolved around the obvious work, food, clothing, and daily hustle and bustle. But everything began to change the night I forgot to lock my bedroom door. That night, the clock was just past 2 in the morning, and I was awakened by a very small click. I turned around and suddenly realized that my bedroom door was slightly ajar. I was sure I had closed it, but I couldn't remember if I had locked it. In the darkness, I saw something standing in the doorway, tall and thin, motionless. I thought I was seeing things, but the shadow was too real to be an illusion. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. But just a few seconds later, I heard slow footsteps approaching the bed. Someone's cold breath was close to my ear, and a hoarse voice whispered, "You're lucky this time. I'm just dropping by. Remember to lock the door next time." The next morning, everything was normal. The door was closed, with no sign of forced entry. I told myself it must be a dream. But in my subconscious, I knew something had really entered my room. Over the next few days, I began to notice strange changes. Every morning, the chair in my room would be pulled out of place, even though I was sure I had not touched it. Another night, while I was sleeping, I clearly felt someone sitting on the edge of my bed. The weight was so real that the mattress caved in. But when I turned on the light, there was no one. The scariest thing was when I woke up at 3:13 a.m. to find my diary open, stopped at a page I had not written on. Scrawled on the page were the words, "Lock the door, or they will come in." I began to investigate the apartment I was renting. It turned out that the previous occupant of this room had disappeared without a trace. The elderly neighbor downstairs said that the victim finally disappeared after complaining that someone was always standing right at the door looking in at night. I searched through old newspapers and found at least 3 other missing persons cases in the same building, all unsolved. The only thing in common, all the victims disappeared at night, and they had previously mentioned that the bedroom door was not locked. In the following days, things became more and more tense. Every night I locked the door, but in the morning I found the lock unlocked. I tried turning on the camera, but the recording always disappeared right around 3 a.m., replaced by a black screen. One night, I couldn't stand it anymore, so I decided to pretend to be asleep and observe. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the lock made a soft click sound and the door slowly opened. A thin, dark figure, taller than the door frame, walked in. It bent down, its face obscured in the darkness, but its eyes were bright red. It whispered again, "Locking the door is just a rule. You broke it." Then it placed an old piece of paper on my desk. It said, "Once the door is opened, they won't stop. If you want to survive, find the first one." I started having the same dream. I woke up, found myself standing in the hallway of the building in front of my own room. Inside, I saw another version of me sleeping, and something was crawling out of the darkness towards the bed. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. The dream repeated itself many times, each time more clearly, like a warning. After many days of searching, I found information about the first person who had ever gone missing here, a girl named Sarah, who had lived in this room more than 20 years ago. She famously kept a diary, the last of which read, "Every night they knock on the door. If I forget to lock it, I'm afraid I'll never wake up." But the diary was left unfinished, the last page torn. No one knows where she went. The deeper I delve into the truth, the more it seems like this is not just a curse, but a cruel game. Maybe they don't kill immediately, but let the person in this room destroy themselves with obsession, then slowly drag them down to the abyss. Tonight, as I write these lines, it's almost 3 a.m. I hear the familiar click at the door. The lock is turning, even though I've locked it firmly. I know this time they'll come in. If I disappear after tonight, maybe someone else will rent this room again. And the game continues. I thought I would never have the chance to write another word after that night. But the next morning, I woke up to find myself still in bed, the door closed. Only, the mirror hanging on the wall did not reflect my image. I tried standing in front of the mirror, raising my hand, even hitting it hard, but the mirror only showed an empty room. I looked around and everything was exactly the same. So why did the mirror refuse to acknowledge my existence? The longer I looked, the more I realized that there was a shadow moving in the mirror, but it was not me. It was someone else, standing motionless right where I was, but with his head tilted slightly and his mouth smiling. On the table, the old paper from the day before disappeared, replaced by a black leather notebook. When I opened it, I saw scribbled pages, mixed with the writing of many different people, probably from people who had been in this room. Some lines were trembling, as if written in fear. They came in for the third time tonight. I locked the door, but still couldn't escape. Don't let anyone know the truth. If you tell them, they'll come sooner. The first one wasn't Lynn. The first one was me. The last page had the same handwriting as mine, but I never wrote, "It's your turn." I tried to find the neighbors to ask more, but strangely, most of the doors were locked. No one answered. Finally, only an old man on the 5th floor was willing to talk. He said, "You still don't understand? That room isn't for living. It's a trap." I asked what kind of trap. The old man just kept silent and laughed dryly. "Whoever stays too long will replace the previous one. Then the new one will become the first one." The next night, I dreamed again of standing in the hallway looking into my own room. But this time, it was different. I clearly saw that there was not just one me sleeping on the bed, but 2 or 3 identical versions. Each one turned their backs to a different direction, breathing lightly. And in the dark corner, a tall, thin figure stood there, looking at each version in turn, then pointing at me, the one watching from the hallway. I suddenly understood. Perhaps I was just one of countless copies, and whether real or fake was no longer important. I decided not to sleep anymore. I prepared a knife, a candle, and tore through the pages of my notebook to find clues. In the middle of the notebook, there was a page with a picture of a door, with the words written below. "To escape, you must open the door from the inside. But if you open it, they will come in." I sat there, stunned. If I locked the door, I would be stuck in a loop. If I opened the door, I would have to face them directly. At exactly 3:13, the familiar click sounded again. But this time, the lock did not open by itself. Instead, a voice called out from outside, "You must choose, stay forever, or open the door and become the next one." I trembled as I held the doorknob. Outside, I felt many cold hands waiting. My heart pounded, and I thought, maybe I was never the main character. Maybe I was just a link in an endless chain. If I opened the door, I would know the truth. But if I opened it, would I still be me? I looked up, took one last look at the mirror. In the mirror, I was smiling, whispering hoarsely, "It's time." Locking the door or opening the door is just a prearranged choice. That night, the neighbors heard the sound of the door opening, then silence. The next morning, room 304 was empty again. The landlord had posted a rental notice. No one knew where the previous tenant had gone. Only the black leather notebook lay on the table, the first page of which bore a new line, "I forgot to lock the bedroom door, and now it's your turn." A week later, room number 304 had a new tenant. I don't know whether I'm writing these lines as the old one, the new one, or just an echo left in these 4 walls. But I clearly remember the face of the girl who walked in young, carrying a small suitcase and a bright smile. She cleaned up a bit, rearranged the tables and chairs, and hung the mirror in its original place. I stood in the dark corner, watching every familiar gesture, as if I had witnessed it dozens of times before. That night, she forgot to lock the door. I heard the familiar click. The door opened slightly. A tall, thin figure walked in, silently, as if the darkness in the room had risen into shape by itself. A cold breath blew down the nape of the girl's neck as she slept. A hoarse whisper. "Luckily, you didn't lock the door today." I shivered, because that sentence was exactly like what I had heard on the first night. Only this time I whispered along, almost in unison with it. The next morning, a black leather notebook appeared on the girl's desk. The last page had a new line, written in shaky but familiar handwriting. "If you've read this far, it means I've disappeared. Don't believe anything in this story. or believe everything. Whatever. I don't know when I wrote that line. Or did the girl write it? Or did someone else? The second night, the girl locked the door carefully. But at exactly 3:13, the lock turned by itself and the door slowly opened. She sat up, grabbing the knife hidden under her pillow. I witnessed everything, but couldn't stop it. The tall, thin figure walked in, slowly, rhythmically. The girl screamed and rushed forward, but the knife went through the air. The black figure tilted its head, chuckled. Then it turned to look at me, who was standing in the corner of the room, completely unrecognized by the girl. I wanted to scream, "Don't open the door." But the words wouldn't come out of my throat. Everything was dark. When I woke up, I found myself lying on the bed, the door closed. There was no girl, no knife, no scream. There was only the black leather notebook on my chest. On the first page was a new line, written neatly and sharply. "The story is over. But you are still here." I quickly flipped to the last page. The line I had written had disappeared, replaced by a short sentence. "Remember to lock your bedroom door next time." I looked up. The door was ajar.